Lin Tian didn't put up any resistance. Why would he? At that moment, the power in the room didn't belong to him, it belonged to Jamila. She might have only been the wife of a duke on paper, but in practice she had more sway than most nobles could ever dream of. Not only did she have influence, she carried a talent that set her apart from almost every dwarf alive, the ability to forge weapons that ranked among the best in the world. Lin Tian knew it was the kind of gift that could turn kingdoms upside down. A person like her wasn't someone he could ignore, she was someone he had to use. Just as he was about to take the next step, a sharp voice rang from outside the chamber. "Is Her Majesty inside?" The sudden call froze both of them. Jamila's face drained of color for a split second before she moved with startling speed. In a practiced motion, she slipped under Lin Tian's blanket, as if she had hidden like this before. The swiftness of it said everything. Lin Tian clenched his jaw, he had no choice now. If he didn't step out, it would only draw more suspicion. He pushed himself up and moved to the door. Outside stood Winnie and Linda, the two daughters of another duke. Compared to Jamila, their youth still clung to their faces, softening their features with a hint of innocence. But the look in their eyes told a different story. Whatever was going on in their heads, it wasn't as pure as their appearance suggested. They looked around, clearly searching for the queen. One of them asked where she was, saying they had matters to discuss. Lin Tian forced a smile, one that probably looked stiffer than he intended, and told them the queen hadn't returned yet. He asked carefully what business they had that brought them knocking so late at night. The sisters traded a knowing look with one another, their lips curving into sly smiles. They didn't even bother hiding the amusement in their eyes. When they turned back to him, both their gazes carried a weight that made him uneasy. "What a pity," one of them murmured. "If Her Majesty isn't here, then we'll just have to discuss it with you, Sir Dennis." Lin Tian's heart skipped. He caught the undertone instantly. He wasn't clueless, he could see the shadows tucked inside their sweet voices. But before he could come up with an excuse, the sisters pressed closer, tugging him back inside the room. Their eyes swept over him, tracing the lines of his body like they were cataloging every detail. And then, with a curiosity that was both playful and far too direct, their gaze settled lower, lingering with unspoken intent. Trying to mask his awareness, Lin Tian asked again, pretending to misunderstand what it was they wanted to talk about. But his words came out too tight, too hollow. There was no convincing them he didn't know. They leaned in even closer, almost draping themselves over him now, their voices dipping into whispers that curled like smoke. "We just want to know," one of them breathed, "what the strongest man in the kingdom is really like." At that moment, Lin Tian panicked and blurted out, almost in a cry, that he thought they were supposed to be having a discussion, so why were his pants being tugged down? Beneath the blanket, Jamila simmered with barely hidden fury. These little brats, she thought bitterly. What are they even pretending for? If I hadn't deliberately sent Adele away, would they have ever dared to sneak in here? Before she could act on her anger, a voice drifted in from outside the room. It was soft, almost coaxing. "Sis, are you in there? My dear sister, I'm not feeling well. Please come out and see me." The sound startled Winnie and Linda. In an instant they blew out the lamp, plunged the room into darkness, and scrambled under the blanket with Lin Tian. But the shock came when they realized they weren't alone under there. Jamila was already beneath the covers, glaring fiercely, and with a sharp gesture she urged them all to stay silent. The atmosphere grew suffocatingly awkward. Nobody dared breathe too loudly, and the tension pressed down heavier than the blanket itself. The door creaked open. It was Adele's younger sister, the blonde dwarf girl Lin Tian had seen once before in the tavern. She sauntered in with a sly little grin, her tone half mocking, half jealous. "Hee, sis, don't be mad at me. Who told you to be so selfish? Hogging Dennis all to yourself." Without hesitation, she shoved the door wide and stepped boldly inside. The farce unraveled. Jamila, Winnie, and Linda couldn't take it any longer. They scrambled out from under the blanket, their faces stormy with shame and irritation, and they all turned dark glares on the intruder. The whole messy scene had collapsed into a pile of awkwardness so unbearable it felt worse than death. Covering their faces, the three women bolted from the room, fleeing in humiliation. Lin Tian stayed behind, left standing on the bed with a slightly regretful look. He hadn't expected those noble girls to be so daring, so lustful even. Still, in an odd way, the encounter had saved him a lot of effort. Their behavior had cracked open connections he would have otherwise had to spend time building. Now, his thoughts shifted back to his real purpose. It was about time to move forward with the Queen on the plan for producing magical weapons. Midnight came before Adele finally returned. She was weary from her day but still carried that lively spark in her eyes. The moment she saw him, she threw herself at Lin Tian with a fierce hunger, kissing him over and over, their passion quickly tumbling into fiery, consuming positions. Even in the midst of her embrace, Lin Tian spoke, his voice steady but urgent. "My love, there's something very important I need to tell you." The Queen's face flushed deep red, her words broken up by gasps and moans. In her mind, nothing mattered more than what they were doing right now. But Lin Tian pressed on, refusing to be swallowed by the moment. "My love," he said, "I think our kingdom is weakening day by day. We can't afford to wait. I propose we restart the Apollo Forge, mass-produce magical weapons, and rebuild the strength of the realm." His words pulled Adele's attention, even as her body continued to move with his. Surprised to hear such a heavy proposal in such a time, she shifted in his arms, her breath uneven. She admitted softly that yes, it was necessary, but the nobles would fight against it, and the common people might resist as well. Forging magical weapons, Adele realized, was nothing like hammering ordinary iron or steel. To even attempt it, they'd have to journey deep into the undercrypts, dig out rare veins of ore, gather priceless materials for the enchantments, and call upon the blessings of the dwarven gods while weaving in the most refined smithing craft known to their people. Only then could such weapons be brought into existence. Mass production? That was another matter entirely. Mobilizing an entire nation's strength would be necessary, yet the thought weighed on her. The people and the nobles had grown too comfortable, too complacent. And Adele herself had only just taken the throne. To issue such an overwhelming command right now, it might stir more resistance than loyalty. Lin Tian, however, answered in a calm, assured tone. He told her not to worry about the common folk. "The dwarves live for their drink," he explained. "If we promise that every worker who joins the forging effort will be given a free daily share of fine wine, they'll pour themselves into the task with all their strength. Not only will it motivate them, but it will also come across as a gesture of your generosity, something that will only strengthen your image as their queen." Then he leaned closer, his voice carrying the same quiet certainty. "As for the nobles, leave them to me." His hand drifted across her body, a gentle caress that startled her at first. Adele's heart fluttered. The plan sounded seamless, without flaw, and she almost let herself sink into that sense of security. But the touch suddenly turned rough, more forceful, sharp enough to bring tears to her eyes. She gasped, her protest spilling out, pleading words, a broken admission begging him to stop. She gave in quickly, nodding to his will. The chamber soon drowned in a different rhythm altogether, the air thick with the sound of indulgence and unrestrained abandon.